This is, quite frankly, a boring speech. It is not a speech that I want to be giving. But the truth is, if you allow liars to constantly lie and they can get away with it, then they just keep doing it. So it's probably useful for us more often to take people's nonsense tweets, which they do for a bizarre audience of political weirdos on Twitter, and they should have to defend these statements in public. It is transparently obvious that if you vote against a $1.5 trillion bill, that doesn't mean you were voting against, you were trying to vote against everything particularly in it, that you were against those kinds of funding. It might be because you were against lots of things in it that are indefensible for the voters. It's transparently stupid, and the voters get it. So to the question of do omnis make sense, the answer is no, we should do better. But the question that our republic is partly going to have to resolve if we're going to get healthy again as a polity is, will politicians be able to resist the short-term crack of social media? It doesn't look like very many of us in this body are interested in trying to speak to 70 and 75 and 80% of the electorate, but rather that lots and lots of politicians are completely happy to speak to the very narrow range of fan service that they do on Twitter. Many politicians are addicted to Twitter. They want their sick burns and their retweets and their likes. It's crack, and they have an addiction, and it's sad. The truth is that the folks who do this kind of garbage are hopelessly out of touch with the reality of the people's lives that we're actually supposed to be serving. It's not useful to drink your own bathwater, and Twitter isn't real life. Should we continue doing political discourse like this? Should we say that someone who had concerns about this was trying to kill off babies and puppies? No, we shouldn't lie like this. We shouldn't do that. We owe the voters better than that. We should tell the truth, and we should try to talk to voters like you're actually talking to a room of regular people who have jobs and who are actually trying to put bread on the table for their kids, and probably are pretty grateful for the inheritance that is the American Republic and our leadership on the global stage for freedom lovers.
Madam President, I got the chance to hear some of Senator Sasse's remarks. I noted a floor chart with my name on it, accusing me of what he called tribal hackery. I'm not exactly sure what the rules of the Senate are. I'm not sure that that is becoming of the United States Senate to use those terms about fellow members. But let me come down to the floor to explain why I think we should have a legitimate debate in this chamber about a phenomenon in which Republicans very often are not willing to cast their vote in a way that is aligned with their voice. Yes, I noted this morning, as was displayed on Senator Sasse's chart, that this week, of the Republicans who stood up at a press conference and eviscerated President Biden's handling of the Ukraine crisis, 2/3 of them voted against the budget that included $14 billion of aid to Ukraine. I see a fundamental inconsistency in criticizing an administration for not doing enough, but then not being willing to cast a vote to get aid to the people of Ukraine. Now, Senator Sasse's second chart, the one that didn't accuse me of tribal hackery, laid out a very true statement in which a small percentage of the overall budget is dedicated to Ukraine aid. That is, of course, true. But the reason why I find it concerning that members of the Senate, who, I take their word for it, are genuinely interested in getting help to the people of Ukraine, are then voting against the budget that delivers it, is because it speaks to a broader problem in the Senate today, which is a lack of interest in compromise, a lack of interest in finding a result, a fealty to the perfect and an antagonism to the good. Now, sure, I'd be happy to yield.
Yeah, so
I haven't. I mean, Senator Sasse, I was going to try to respond to your critique, but I'm happy to yield at this point.
So let me just see if I understand what you just said. So 0.8% of the bill that was passed in the middle of the night last week is about Ukrainian aid. Do you believe that the people who voted against it because they were against Ukrainian aid?
So every one of us approaches
I'm asking a really simple question. Do you think a single person that your Twitter self-pleasuring was for, do you think a single person that voted against it because they were against Ukrainian aid?
Absolutely not.
So then what's the point of the tweet?
The point is
service.
Is that the only way that this place passes legislation, right, is compromise, is voting on pieces of legislation that have in it.
Where are the pieces, dude? It's $1.5 trillion.
If the senator...
Senators, I'd ask the senators to direct their questioning to the president and give the other senators the decorum to respond.